my inner knowing, empowering you to find your compass for the journey. We are dedicated to supporting you to rediscover and trust your natural ability to navigate life each day by sharing insight and experience through the lens of two professional communicators and their guests. We intend to prompt internal inquiry that supports all those willing to explore a unique path.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I am great today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I feel good.
that's so good.
Yeah.
Well,
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Had a really nice time earlier today with my sister, one of my sisters. And it's nice to be here doing this with you too. And it's sunny outside.
Got the daily double.
Yeah.
Triple, I guess. Yay.
Yeah. So this is a little bit more of abandoned property, but this is My Body Afraid? And I wanted to share a process that I went through and exercises that I developed for myself during this process, and really trying to work on this connection with my body, which I do believe is a lifelong journey since, I don't know. And maybe if I had been taught that as a child, I would still be on the journey. I don't know, because I wasn't. So I don't know where I would be.
Right.
But it does feel like it is the rest of my life. So.
Are you looking forward to it?
To what?
Doing that for the rest of your life?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't trade this work for anything. I wouldn't.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And life still happens and shit happens and things that aren't okay still happen and that, but I wouldn't trade it. I absolutely would not trade it.
We get better and we grow through those challenges or events that happen, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean we don't get stuck, right?
Yeah.
I've been, struggling the last several years with my body, and I am still hopeful that wherever that journey is taking me, that there will be more freedom coming, even though it's not here right now. So one of my children, all of my children that were eligible to be in the Boy Scouts are in the Boy Scouts. And why I chose that as a parent was because I felt like there was no way as a parent that I could expose my children to as much as doing Boy Scouts would expose them to. Obviously not thinking about the negative things that might come from that, but all the other things. And I don't have regret about that experience, even the parts that weren't great. And I was very active in Boy Scouts with my boys, going to summer camp and campouts all months of the year. I've learned a lot, and I don't regret the growth that came from being involved with them and going to summer camp and all the heat and the rain and the bugs and the raccoons and snakes and everything else that came with.
Yeah, and probably hanging out mostly with dudes.
Yes, dudes from
dude leaders is what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. And I was thinking 11-year-olds
all the way up
to probably 90-year-olds. Yeah. And I think that was a role that I knew how to do, because of the way my dad raised me, or how I experienced him raising me, which was very activity based, right? And it was typically project working, some play in there too, but project working. And so it just felt familiar. But I have only done one high adventure with the boys.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. So, for those not familiar, a high adventure is something that is like a camp out, but more.
It's Boy Scouts on steroids,
It's
right?
Boy Scouts on steroids, right? And so my youngest son asked me if I would go to what's called Sea Base with him. And as best I recall, 7 or 8 days, but ocean connected. And I love sitting by the ocean, but that's really about it. I don't necessarily want to be in the ocean or on the ocean, but I like being next to the ocean, listening to the ocean, exploring the edges of the ocean.
Sure.
But Sea Base required a lot of in and on the ocean. And what I knew ahead of time really was I just had to get through the swimming test that happened as soon as we arrived on base. And this is down in Florida, and it's called Summerlin Key is where Sea Base is for the Boy Scouts. I'd never been down there in that, area. So I didn't have really any idea what to expect other than I knew I had to pass the swimming test. And so at this point in my journey, that ball of anxiety that I used to carry was no longer something that was always there.
Mm-hmm.
And I, again, had done a lot of work on releasing that from my body very intentionally over the years. And
that was in your gut.
That was in my gut. Yeah, that was always just sitting there in my gut. So we arrive that day and we go down to the, docks, marina area where we have to do our swim test. And the reality is I don't remember how long. I could tell you it was a mile. It wasn't. I'm just teasing, but it may have
looked like it been, right? I think it's a long way, not,
Yeah. 100 yards, 200 yards. I don't remember. I know it was long. But I also knew that I could swim. Scared. I was definitely one of those people that grew up thinking there were sharks in swimming pools, or not thinking it, but always the fear like one's going to come out, right? So
there was a movie called Piranha out when I was a kid. And so whenever we went swimming in the lake, I was afraid I would get eaten by a piranha. Right. And it was real fear.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The shark thing was too. And I would work on that as a teenager. I tried to work on that. I would get into a swimming pool by myself, not safe choice, but I kept trying to work on it, and it was there. And I'm not saying that I'm over any of that fear. That this work that I'm getting ready to share wasn't about making the ocean more comfortable for me. It really was learning more about my body. Is ultimately that was the goal. I didn't make the goal, I'm going to be okay swimming with sharks. That was not the goal. How can I learn more about my body in this process of a week of doing things that I was very afraid to do? That was the process. That was the goal. So we get down there and people start getting in, and there are these fish that are like swimming in the dock area that are like doing these like spiral circle things. And I'm just like, you are kidding me.
Like lots of them.
I would say maybe 3 or 4 here and there, but active, right? And I'm just like, I don't even know what those are. I've never seen those before. And this is something I also told myself. This was a way of like helping my process along, is I would say, the Boy Scouts do this every year, and I'm not hearing stories on the news about Boy Scouts dying down here all the time. So
ocean floor littered with remains. Boy Scouts.
Right. No. So that was a big part of, I just kept saying, Theresa, like this has to be okay, even though you are afraid. This has to be okay. Doesn't mean someone can't die, but they're not dying all the time. So I got in, and it was so hard. And I kept saying to myself, is your body afraid? Yes. In this particular case, it is.
How did you know?
My body got heavier. It got harder to swim. I got more afraid. I didn't think that I could do it. I thought that I was going to have to spend the week sitting in the whatever the dorm that we were staying in.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much, that was happening while I was trying to finish this. And I just kept pushing through something that I know how to do. I was not in my body. And this awareness of what my experience was afterwards, not during it. I mean, I was literally just trying to keep from drowning,
right.
And I got there and I climbed up the ladder and I literally just collapsed on the dock. But people are just there. Nobody's paying attention to me. It's like, next person, right? And I'm just sitting there grateful that I'm alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I am no longer in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sit until everybody's done, which was good. I had time to breathe and find myself again. And then every single day I got to do it again, whether it was paddleboarding or deep sea fishing or snorkeling or jumping into the water with sharks or, there were a few other things too, but the ones that I think about the most was the deep sea fishing, because that was like, I had nothing else to do other than to focus on what my body was experiencing. I'd never been deep sea fishing. And so we're on a boat. I don't know, maybe there's 10 of us there. So a group of boys, 6 boys, 7 boys, something like that. And then I think maybe 3 or 4 of us leaders, and then maybe 1 or 2 people that, like the captain of the boat and the
captain,
helper.
first mate, yeah.
Right. And I don't know how big the boat was, maybe 24 feet, something like that. I mean, it wasn't huge. Plenty of room for us, but it was not a huge boat. And, we go out, and I have had some boat trauma before. It's going to make me cry. And I hadn't even thought about this until just this moment. But when I was 18, I went on my first speedboat, and I had not ever been on a speedboat before. And I was with my boyfriend at the time with his friends, and they were tubing. And I, again, never had done anything like that before. I had been in a canoe, and I had been in a fishing boat, but I had never been in a speedboat. And I was watching the process happening with other people. And then I was like, okay, I'll go put on the life jacket, get on the tube. And I said, if I do this, which was basically kind of cut it, the motor, that you'll stop. And they're like, okay. Well, that's obviously not what happened. And so I'm out there on the water, something completely unfamiliar. Again, don't like being in water or on water. And when I got to that point where I was tired and I could no longer hold on, and I did that, they didn't stop the boat. So at some point I couldn't hold on any longer. And when I let go and resigned myself to the fact that I'm going to have to get in the water, and I let go, the cord got wrapped around one of my ankles, and I got dragged underwater. And so no doubt that was in play there too. I have no control over this boat, right? And I can't just go up and tell the captain to get out of the way, which is what I did another time I was on a boat with someone who I didn't feel safe with.
Right.
As I just went up and said, I'm driving. So
sure.
I knew that wasn't an option. And so, did I mention that my children have been my biggest opportunities for learning? I would not have done this had he not asked me.
Sure.
And so the whole way out while we're going to the fishing spot, right?
And this is it's a long trip, right?
Oh, it's a long trip.
How long out?
Well, the first time 2 hours.
Out?
Yeah, out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're way
out. Right. And of course, the boys are having a great time, right? And they're just like, this is amazing. And they're sitting in the front, and the wind's blowing, and they are just like, they're having a great time. And I'm sitting like on the bench that's like in front of where the captain is steering. And I've got the whole bench, and I have my hands down on the bench, and I'm like, for 2 hours as the boat goes right, just the whole of it just keeps hitting the water,
right?
And I'm like, is your body afraid? No. Okay, then you're not going to die. Is your body afraid? No. Okay, then you're not going to die. Like, I just kept like telling myself that, and it was really this opportunity for me to either, and again, dissociation's not my go-to, right? So it's to be more vigilant. And so watching, staying present, what's happening in your body. And then we get out there, and the boat, I can't even tell you how relieved I was when the boat stopped moving. And then, everybody's fishing. I'm not really interested in fishing at that point. I'm exhausted, actually.
Sure.
And boys catch fish, blah, blah, blah. Everything's great. And then the captain says, now we're going offshore. And I look around and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I don't see shore anywhere. Mm-hmm. And so here we go again. Boom, 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 doing the same thing. Right. And just, trying to be present with the boys and trying to stay in my body, trying to learn, trying to just everything I could do to just stay there and learn. And then we get out, do some more fishing, catch some more fish. And then at this point, I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom. And so I say to the captain, so where do I go to the bathroom? And he said, that bucket or in the ocean. And I was like, what?
Mm-hmm. You're kidding, right?
There's not a secret toilet.
Yeah. Seriously.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I stood there. I can't tell you how long I stood there, but I was like, the water was stunning. I had never seen a sapphire water like that. Like really, like what I would call sapphire. Deep blue. It was beautiful and terrifying. And there was a choice that I had to make. I either get in the water and go to the bathroom, or I pee in that bucket in front of everybody.
Right.
Yeah. I couldn't get in the water. So I just told everybody to turn around, which they did.
Sure.
And I peed in the bucket because that was all I could do. I literally could not get my body to get in the water. And I knew that. I was aware of that I literally was making that choice. And so for me, I was more willing to be embarrassed than to get in the water and risk being eaten by all of the things that I could imagine.
A marine predator.
A marine predator of some kind, right? And then there was the ride back. And I just kept doing the same thing over and over and over. Is your body afraid? Is your body afraid? Is your body afraid? And if sometimes I said yes, then I would say, is it really? Or do you just think that it is? So I, again, just kept asking these questions. I just kept being curious with myself about what the experience was. And it wasn't like a smooth week. It really was an exhausting experience for me.
Confronting your fear daily.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We did kayaking, tandem kayaking through some mangrove, things. And for me, that was difficult too, because it's like, what's going to come out of that? Those
snake.
That's right. Right.
Looks like a branch.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah, it was a lot. And the snorkeling was very difficult. I didn't end up in the water very long. I did get in and, did my best to really just breathe Hearing myself breathe underwater was good practice. Scary. But I was like, you're not going to make it very long if you keep breathing like that,
Sure.
And so I was like, okay, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. And then it would, I'd stop breathing, right? Or I'd start breathing faster. And then but I could hear myself, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And so there was like this constant feedback that was happening that we may not always get, just not in the water, under the water. And so that was really helpful for me to increase my awareness in regards to how my breathing was all over the place when I was doing my best to stay regulated in the water. And one of our guides, she liked sharks, swimming with sharks. And so she was like, oh, I hope we see a shark today. And I was like, yeah, I hope we don't see a shark today. So there was, again, just this constant challenge in my body and my mind that week. And then one of the days we went to something called Munson Island, where they go out and they drop you off on this dock that's, I don't know how many 100 yards from shore, more than 100 yards from shore for sure. And you have like wet packs. And so and you're going to spend the night out there, and you have the wet packs, all your stuff's in there, and you basically jump off the dock into the water. And then you go from the dock to the beach and you set up camp and eat the fish you caught from deep sea fishing and all that. But what's so interesting is that in the water that you have to jump into is full of nurse sharks. And I don't care that nurse sharks don't typically bite you unless you step on them. Every part of my body said, we don't do that.
Right.
We don't jump in water where we know there are sharks. What if you land on a nurse shark when you jump in the water, right? And they do have sharp teeth. I looked it up.
Right.
And so I had to go through, I chose to go through this process of challenging the fear. Do Boy Scouts get eaten all the time by sharks down at sea base? No, Theresa, they don't. Is your body afraid? Part of your body is afraid. Is it completely afraid? No, it's not completely afraid. I just kept going through this process of challenging my story and all of the things that I could imagine happening. And I followed the instructions that I was giving, and I jumped in and I did whatever they call, they may call it the shark shuffle, but they may call it something else. I don't remember.
Shark shuffle sounds like a Boy Scout
sounds like
term.
Yeah. And so, we did this shuffled, to shore and spent the night. Luke and I slept in hammocks that we tied up to trees, and which was lovely. And it was a nice time, despite the effort that it took to get out there, and then also to do it on the way back, because we had to, the next day,
right,
as we were coming back, we had to get back in the water that had the sharks and walk back out to these docks to get picked up on. And so, for me, there was choice for sure, but it was a very intentional, exhausting process for me. But I used it as best I could to learn more about my body and my mind.
So I have questions.
Yeah.
So to the outside observer or listener, as I'm listening to you talk, there's a lot of out of body events happening.
Yeah.
And this may not have been your experience, but when you're rolling over to, have I ever seen an article where a Boy Scout died at sea base and, was he eaten by a marine predator and da, 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 da. No, that never happens. I'm convincing myself, and you're up in your head.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like you're bringing yourself back to your body by asking, am I afraid? Am I afraid in my body?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, just to help us understand what that's, what that can be like.
Mhm.
And your experience may be different than my experience
Sure,
or anybody else's.
absolutely.
But when you ask that question,
Mhm.
tell us about the process and what feedback you're getting that you find reliable.
Sure. So for me, having the contrast, I believe, of what it felt like to be afraid all the time before versus having released that what I used to hold in my gut all the time, the anxiety. I think that was the contrast was something that I needed. I think about so if I imagine myself on the boat and I'm saying, Theresa, is your body afraid? I'm first checking for that feeling that I know is fear. And so it doesn't have to be that, right? Like it could be in your head, in your hands, in your butt. It can be right because we don't all hold fear in the same place. So
Or in the same place every time for us.
oh, sure, or in the same place every time, right?
So tell us more about your experience.
Yeah. So for me, that's what I recognize.
Is it always the ball in your gut that you're looking for, or do you find it other places if there's fear? If the answer's hell yes, there's fear in my body.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I don't know that I'm thinking, as we're saying this. I believe my fear almost always is in my gut. I'm not saying that there hasn't been other times that it didn't manifest as somewhere else, but not as significantly as it is in my gut, for sure. So I'd be looking for that. I mean, that's what I was looking for when I was asking myself that. Is your body afraid? I was literally asking myself, what does your gut feel like? I mean, I could have said it that way too.
Right.
It's just not what I did say. And then, okay, so your gut isn't afraid, then you're not going to die. Was essentially my process. And it didn't mean that, again, all those other conversations weren't happening that were, trying to take me towards fear, or trying to take me towards safety, whatever. But I just kept asking myself that. More of my energy was focused on what my body was experiencing. And so I say this and I'm thinking, okay, but that wasn't like me cut off from my body, which I think can happen too. I mean, I could be cut off from my body and make really unwise choices.
Sure.
Because I'm not allowing feeling. So I knew it wasn't that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it wasn't a dissociative experience that was happening where I wasn't aware. So I knew that I was present, that I wasn't dissociating. And maybe me even asking myself, is your body afraid, was part of me, keeping myself from dissociating.
Well, I'm not putting this on you. It's the way I took it. As you said, I kept saying, coming back and coming back and coming back. Am I afraid in my body? Is my body afraid? Over and over, like on the boat ride and I'm assuming doing the shark shuffle for 100 yards or 200 yards. That was a process of staying present.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting because, now I have these fears of tunnels and bridges and elevators. And it is what I did last month when I ended up in a tunnel that I couldn't see the other side. I couldn't see through to the other side. It was a really long, tunnel. And I was telling myself a mantra then too. I was telling myself, it isn't your time. This tunnel's not going to collapse. It isn't your time. You're not going to drown, because it was a tunnel under a river, a big river. And I could see water, like not
Sure.
helpful, not helpful. And so I do think it is exhausting, for sure. But I do think it's like some level of mantra, I think, that I have developed over the years, where I go into this repetitive, place, very intentionally, to keep myself here. Because I think that if I don't do that, I literally think I would freak the fuck out. I'm in the tunnel and I'm telling myself that, repeatedly. And then there's another part of my brain that's like, I'm going to explode. I'm going to lose my mind. I think it might be safer if Xander's driving right now. Not true. I'm just saying. We're in Boston, in the city. Not true. Not true. But that's how, there's that part of myself that is, I think, literally trying to get myself to escape this, because I am afraid. And then this other part of me that's just like, it's not time, right? So I and whatever we want to call those parts, I am working really hard to keep this one in charge, instead of this one that's like imagining the catastrophe and how I could respond if I allowed that part to be in charge. And so it's interesting as you talk about it, because I'm just, I'm thinking about, I think I learned the mantra thing, when I almost died, when I had DIC in 2006. I mean, that's how I would get through the night, was that, repetitive, mantra. And then I would notice, during, I would kind of drift off, and I would go into fear. And then I would be like, oh, okay, come back to that. Start that again, start that again, start that again. And I drift off and start that again, start that again, start that. And so it's interesting thinking about the process. But I do think that for me, that works, is that short, repetitive piece. And I guess it's like, don't lose yourself, don't don't go down the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It helps me to stay here and in my body, so I'm not following the trauma reaction as best I can. I'm not saying it's always effective, but or easy. Definitely exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah. That constant bringing yourself back or keeping yourself in. And
Right.
for me, I would go down the dissociative route, I think, which is I would be lost in thought of all the horrible things that could happen and that's going to, and all that. And then I would pull myself back in.
Yeah.
But sounding like you do it repetitively enough that you don't go that far. It's just, it's there, but you're not going out of your body into just the mind thought. Is that what you're saying?
I think I'm better at it.
Right.
I mean, I think, when I had to get in that elevator last year at that courthouse, because
Yeah.
you can't take the stairs anymore. And on the way, down, I mean, I got up, to the 7th floor, and I had to thankfully I had, I had time to get myself together before I had to go in the courtroom. But afterwards, I mean, the, crazy things, on the way up, there wasn't a stop. I got all, just went, so I'm telling myself, it's going to be okay. 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 The elevator's going to open on the right floor. All the things that
Right.
I just, I'm telling myself to not dissociate. And then on the way down, every floor, which was hard because that to me was like this greater sense of being out of control of the experience. Right. So it just got harder every time the floor stopped. And, and again, I'm having this conversation of, you're going to be okay. You're going to get down. And then this other part of me that is like, I was grateful when these two police officers got in, the elevator and they had guns on them. And then I'm like, okay, if the elevator stops and we get trapped, I can use the guns to get us out. Like totally irrational thought happening, right? Like it literally doesn't even make sense, right? But that's that part of me that's dragging me towards dissociating.
Sure.
Right? Like creating this completely irrational, like fantasy. And then this other part that's like, don't go. Right? Like we can.
No.
Yeah. Like we're going to make it through this, right? Or sometimes, like I'll imagine myself like turning into the Incredible Hulk. That's another, like irrational part that comes up. And again, this is just my process, that's happening. And I just, I just tell myself like, it's okay. It's not your time. It's not your time. It's not your time. But I do think that is helpful for me. I wish that it took all the other stuff away. It doesn't take it away. But I do think it allows me to do the best I can to stay present. And it is exhausting. Whew. I remember getting off that elevator at the courthouse and, thankful for the long walk to my car, thankful for not needing to be anywhere right away. Like I can just sit here and breathe and drink the tea I left in my car so that I would, have something. I didn't even know I had to go up an elevator until I got in there, but I was very thankful that I had something to just help me, ground more.
Right.
But
the taste and feel and all that bringing
sensory,
you back into the body.
Yeah. All the sensory stuff. Yeah. That day happened to be sunny and just, feeling the warmth of the sun through the windows. I can imagine, I can put myself back there in that, place. But it is just that constant effort to stay in my body and not let it take me somewhere where it thinks that it is protecting me, right? Because obviously, if I had let that part take over, right, that would not be good.
The Hulk.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Right. And then, like that day that we did get stuck in the elevator last year, and it wasn't for long. Didn't matter.
Right.
But there was that part that's like, don't get in that elevator, Theresa. Don't get in that elevator. And then I did. And then it stopped. And everybody's Elsa that's in the elevator is laughing.
Right.
I am not laughing. And then thankfully the elevator starts moving again and everybody's laughing. I'm not laughing. We get off. I go to the bathroom, and have what I think was for the first time for me a panic attack, which I don't think I'd ever had. And that was one of those times that I couldn't keep myself grounded like that. The fear became too big. And I'm just fortunate it didn't last long, right?
Right.
But the reality is, I don't know what I would have done had that elevator not started moving again. I don't know what I would have done. Because I don't think that in that moment, for whatever reason, maybe I was already tired. Maybe I didn't feel good. Maybe something. I don't know. But I could not in that moment bring in is your body afraid?
Yeah.
Was not accessible.
Right.
Literally was not accessible.
Right. Despite
despite
15 years
Right.
of work
right,
or 25 years of work.
right,
Yeah.
right, absolutely. And I don't know that I learned anything from that other than to do everything I can to not get in an elevator, which is what I do now. Everything I can to not get in an elevator. And sometimes it's impossible. Since COVID, things have changed in regards to accessibilities of stairwells, which is fascinating. I did not know that would change things like that. So I'm not saying it always works either, because sometimes it doesn't.
Let me ask you something, babe.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of distress going on across the table for me with tears and tissue and I'm sorry for your pain, sweetie. But I want to use it as an opportunity to model. Okay.
Yeah.
So take a second and tell us what you could do for yourself to ground or to check in with your body. What's your body feeling right now?
Tight. My throat's tight. I mean, I know that you can hear that. I'm aware that I'm intentionally doing my best to breathe slowly. I happen to sit in a chair that moves. It's lovely. So some bilateral, stimulation for sure. Just letting my body rock back and forth slowly. Helpful to have you ask me to not be deflective or diminishing of my experience. Just allowing it to be what it is as I think about those things. Not trying to fix it. I don't need you to try to take my experience away. Just allowing room for it. Not needing it to be hurried up. Yeah. It's interesting just thinking, being aware of my body, like where I notice, like right now, most of the tightness is actually in my forehead. And even as I say that and breathe, it releases in my forehead. So it feels less tight right now versus 30 seconds ago.
There were 2 big, deep breaths out.
Yeah.
And your voice has changed. You notice that?
Yeah. 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 Thanks, babe. It's a lot to talk about, right?
It is, and hard not to rescue.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm smothering you with love. There, I just did it. I burst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish this process of, learning to be in our body and when we're not was easier. And hopefully, the sharing of my process and also when I'm not, even if there's a part of me, I mean, I can reflect pretty quickly that I'm not, but I can't always keep myself in my body. And so I think about, like, how do you know, like someone said, how do you know when you're not in your body? I mean, right now, sitting here in this chair, I think for me, it would be when all of those stories become big
Sure.
and feel out of control and helpless and irrational. And I think that even saying that's difficult because it may not even feel that irrational to some people when they think that. I mean, I don't know. I know for me, upon reflection, I can think grabbing an officer's gun and shooting our way out of an elevator sounds irrational, right? But maybe it doesn't to everybody. But it does to me. I know me, and to me, that is not rational. Yeah. Becoming the Incredible Hulk, not rational for me. Not in my body. Surviving somewhere else in some fantasy.
Well, what I think is it's part of the human experience is to be in and out.
Yes. Yes. I don't think we can be
Right.
in all the time.
Perfection, neither required nor desired, right?
Right.
Just moving towards more.
Yeah.
Right. Or
Absolutely.
recognizing time to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Or time to try to come back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing the best we can.
Yeah. Yeah. Learning a little bit more all the time.
Yeah.
What we need for each one of us is going to be different. Our experience will be different. Our process will be different. Yeah. And like always, just hoping that our sharing just helps people think about their own experience in a way they haven't before. Maybe it helps them learn something about themselves that they didn't even know was happening or couldn't get clarity on, or yeah. And
don't be afraid to share with us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What your experience is, or yeah. Again, questions that might be helpful for us to consider.
Yeah. Put those down in the comments and let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
It's so hard to watch your pain across the table and not try to rescue you.
Yeah.
And I know I finally did a little bit, but
I'll take it. Smother me with love.
Yeah. No. I don't know. I love you.
I love you too.
And it's hard to say, but it's part of our human experience, and letting somebody go through their process sometimes in silence is the best way to help them. So, but one thing we do for each other daily is ask, what can I intend for you? What do you need, sweetie, after all that?
Right.
So what can I intend for you?
Well, right now I'm thinking snuggly something. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, probably. Sure. I think just being held, I think, would be really helpful. And you talking about how we hold intentions for each other every day. And sometimes throughout the day, what can I intend for you right now is something that I think's been a powerful part of our relationship.
Yes.
A way for us to slow down our process, right? What do I need today? What do I need? What would be most helpful for me to have today? And then also to be able to share that with you, and not a responsibility thing, just sending that energy your way.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks for your courage and sharing.
Thank you. Thanks for holding space for me to share.
You're welcome.
I love you.
Love you too.
Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to explore life with you. We encourage curiosity, self-growth, and we strive to be more compassionate every day.